Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome back to Rome 2 Total War for our final faction video, which has no opening introductory video since I don't know anything about Pontus. So, as you can tell, we are doing Pontus, which is the daisy in the bright yellow field, so these guys are very happy. Anyway, onto their units right away. Their general can be in 3 different types of units. 2 of them are fairly cheap and 1 of them is expensive. The 2 cheap ones are the Pontic Swordsmen. They're a decent all-arounder sword unit. They're a fairly okay, reliable backline unit, and these are actually a pretty good unit to put your general in if you want to save some money, have a flexible unit, and keep your general out of danger. Next, of course, are the Bronze Shield Pikemen. These are a medium elite pike unit that have got the inspiration, that the encourageability that more elite units tend to have, but they've got a much discounted price. To pay for that for an elite unit, they're not very good stats-wise, so that's another good option for a general. However, pike units in this current edition of the rules are very strong, very durable. Next up is Pontic Royal Cavalry, which are shock cavalry. This is, as always, a good all-around shock cavalry unit. The problem being that, again, you don't necessarily want your general to be in that shock cavalry unit, so do consider where you're going to be placing your general and if you need to protect him. Moving on to melee infantry, we've got hillmen. As always with axe units, these guys are pretty poor quality. Only take them if you only have exactly 310 and you want a little bit more melee punch for some reason. And even then, all they're good for is a flanking force. They're not very solid or reliable in melee combat. Moving on from them, we've got these mercenary Celtic warriors. These guys are actually pretty solid for their cost. They're relatively inexpensive, but the problem is that Pontic swordsmen are quite a bit more solid, especially with that extra 30 armor. And they only cost 110 more. So if you're going to go for these swordsmen, go for the Pontic swordsmen because they're quite a bit better for not very much more money, and they've got a lot more general reliability due to things like discipline and formation attack, and I like the ability to use the whip on these guys because I like whipping people. Anyway, moving on, we've got Eastern Spearmen. As always, they're a levy spear unit. They're utter trash. Don't take them if you can help it. And Thurio Spears, which are actually fairly good. I actually think that Thurio Spears are a good compromise between different stats and costs. So if you want to take Thurio Spears, they're an excellent unit. Go ahead and take some of them. And then you've also got Hoplites. These guys are a little bit more durable than the Thurio Spears. I find that they're a little bit less flexible, but they have got some other options, such as the Pike Phalanx, which the Thurio Spears do not have. So they're another sort of option, and they're fairly good at holding enemies in place. Moving on, got pike infantry here. The pikes for Pontus are a little bit strange. They've got levy pikemen, which are a trash sort of unit. They're not very good. They don't really do all that much for you, but they're sort of cheap and they're sort of there. And you can sort of take them to bolster your backline a little bit and guard your archers if you prefer using them instead of Thurio Spears. And then you've got Bronze Shield Pikemen, who are a very strange unit. They're classified as an elite pike unit, but they're costed like a medium pike unit, and their stats are sort of like a low-medium unit, despite the fact that they've gotten courage, so they're sort of all over the place. They make a pretty reliable pike line, and you can use them pretty effectively for that. Moving on to missile infantry. As the Pontic force, you actually have Eastern-style ranged units, which means you've got precision shot rather than the standard rapid shot. Precision shot, in my opinion, is a much better ability since you don't use more ammunition to increase your damage output. And you've also got these Eastern Javelin Men and Pontic Peltasts, and these have a missile damage 22 Javelin, which is a lot higher than your typical Javelin at 18. So these guys are actually fairly hard-hitting, and combined with precision shot, these guys are very efficient at using their ammunition. I prefer, obviously, the Eastern Javelin Men, just because they're a little bit cheaper. Even though these ones still only have 10 ammunition, that 10 ammunition goes a lot longer than it would for a typical Javelin unit, especially if they're using rapid reload. And the last, of course, is those Eastern Archers. They've actually got Whistling Arrows by default, which is a pretty okay option. I personally rarely ever use it since I prefer the flaming shots, but it's is a pretty good option to be able to pull out of your sleeve if you need to do it. Moving on to their shock cavalry, again, Pontic Royal Cavalry. They're pretty standard for heavy shock cavalry. They're nothing amazing, nothing too special, but they're, again, a pretty decent option for clearing through rear charges or what have you. For melee cavalry, they've got the Mercenary Celtic Light Horse, and these guys are simply too light for what they're doing and for what they cost. 510 is too expensive for a unit with 15 armor, since these guys will just get brushed off the field pretty darn quickly, and they only cost 60 less than citizen cavalry, which have 50 more armor and pretty similar stats otherwise, if not higher. So the citizen cavalry, I find, are just all around a more reliable choice. Even though these guys do have a little bit more melee attack. Then of course you've got Noble Blood Cavalry. Noble Blood Cavalry is amazing. It's pretty inexpensive, but it is, 110 more than the Mercenary Celtic Light Horse. It's still only 50 more than the Citizen Cavalry. Preferably, I will get Noble Blood Cavalry over the other options, and I get Citizen Cavalry only when I can't afford the Noble Blood Cavalry. Moving on to Missile Cavalry, we've got Horse Skirmishers, and these are the Eastern variety, so they again have missile damage of 22. Very decent if you're going to go for a faction with Horse Skirmishers with Javelins. These guys are not a terrible choice, but they've also got Mercen Scythian Horse Archers. These guys have Parthian Shot, and they've also got, all those other great abilities, as well as 30 base missile damage. So these guys have very good deal for what they do in a force, and this makes Pontus the other force that has Parthian Shot Horse Archers. Very effective, very good unit. Moving on, you've got Scythe Chariots. You've seen me use these before. I'm not impressed by them or anything that they do. They just don't really do anything special that I couldn't have done for cheaper with the Noble Blood Cavalry. And Noble Blood Cavalry give me so many more options than these Scythe Chariots do that it's just not really worth taking them. And even if I wanted something that's more durable, I could get the Pontic Royal Cavalry, which has the 100 hit points just like a chariot. So I would give a pass on Scythe Chariots as it currently is. They might do something to fix them or make them better. I'm not really sure. Anyway, let's take a look at Pontus on the campaign map. They're one of the eastern factions along with Parthia. So here you can see them just sort of above Galatia and Armenia and other places along there. They're fairly far in the east, but they have got Persian trade heritage and great marksmen. Those are exact same as with Parthia. Plus 10% wealth from commerce, plus an experience rate for archer recruits. And these guys have got Barbarian Subduers, plus 10% morale when fighting barbarian tribes, and Philhellenis, modern diplomatic bonus, all Hellenic factions. So these guys get along well with the Greeks. These guys have Forsaken Persian origins. And they have a major diplomatic penalty with all Eastern factions due to cultural aversion. So these guys get along really well with the Greeks, and you can make alliances with them fairly easily. But you're a lot closer to a lot of Eastern factions, and they're going to hate your guts, and that's going to be the basis of your expansion for a little while here. Okay, so let's head on into the campaign here. I will see you in the map. Okay, and here we are in Amasia and Sinope. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these correctly. As you can see, as Pontus, you start with two minor settlements with a lot of growth options and fairly decent starting buildings thanks to this harbor here. You are going to want to go ahead and build up a little bit more food or order if possible, but that's going to be entirely up to you how you upgrade these buildings here. If we go to our starting armies, as you can see, we start off with fairly weak armies here. We've got Eastern Spearmen, which are trash. We've got our general in a Bronze Shield Pikeman unit, which is actually not too terrible. And then we've got Eastern Slingers. For recruitment options, we're also a little bit limited with Eastern Slingers and Eastern Spearmen. Not exactly our ideal situation to be starting in. As you can see, we're also at war right from the start with these guys down here, Cappadocia, which I always think of as like cappuccinos, but well, that's just my caffeine addiction talking here. So one of the things you're going to want to do here, just right away, take this city here. And as you can see, it's actually undefended, and this is sort of how it always is here. And that makes it relatively easy to take, or a lot easier than you would otherwise expect it to be.
I have carried out your orders.
Now, let's start moving our army down here, and we're going to... Oops, almost did that wrong here. One of the things we're going to want to consider is getting some mercenary hillmen, and the reason for that is that we're not going to be able to get any really great troops for our faction here through actual recruitment. But one of the other things we can do is just move these guys all the way along to here, and let's look at our details for our army here. Come on, army details. There we go. And replace our general, and it doesn't actually matter. I don't actually mind our general. It's just that he's in the wrong sort of unit for this particular scenario. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put him in a unit of Pontic Royal Cavalry, and you could also put him in a Scythe Chariot, and this is the only time that I'm going to recommend a Scythe Chariot is early game on the campaign map as Pontus, is that a Scythe Chariot will go straight through the light units like they're butter, but so will the Pontic Royal Cavalry, so we're going to go ahead and hire those guys. And this army is going to actually be pretty capable of taking out Samosata pretty much by itself, and that's not going to be any sort of problem for us. As you can see, we're surrounded by a lot of different little tiny cities, and then there's this one provincial capital over here of a relatively friendly nation of Anksaira. I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing that right, as always, but they're not really that hostile to us, so it's not necessarily going to be easy to get them to go to war with us without just declaring war on Anksaira by itself. Now, if we want to get the capital for this region, you can find it by going here, and as you can see, we're allied to the provincial capital owners, which is a very unfortunate thing in my opinion. So we're going to have to try and find other ways to take over that provincial capital, or we're going to simply have to betray our allies and take that from them. I would recommend not doing that for now, because we have got Samosata to take over, and we've also got Mazaka that we can take over here. So we're going to go ahead and start moving this army over there as well. We don't want to walk through friendly territory if we can help it, but you know what, if we can provoke these guys to war with us, that is perfectly fine by me. Trying to remember where our border is, looks like it's right there, so we're just going to have to try and hoof it through there as fast as is possible.
None will escape!
That's wonderful. Gonna switch over to force march.
March! Your feet bleed! You march again!
Okay, so we're at a bit of risk here since these guys can attack us, so we're going to go ahead and recruit our mercenaries now rather than later. We're going to get that one group of hillmen, and we're also going to replace our general here as well with whatever, it doesn't really matter which of them we go with, and again, Pontic Royal Cavalry, and this will let us probably beat that army there in the field. So we're now poised to take Samosata and Mazaka pretty much right away with our armies. We should be able to get both of them by next turn, and that will be a pretty good start for us as Pontus. We're going to go ahead and start working on a recruitment building. We're going to want it in this province. It doesn't really matter which of these buildings is that, and we're going to go ahead and take this other one, expand this, and turn it into, let's turn this one into a consecrated ground. I'll get a shrine to one of the economic focus deities here, since that'll help me control the cities a little bit. As you can see, we're not necessarily happy people. Since we're not attacking anyone at sea, it's worthwhile putting your ship into harbor here, since it reduces public order or disorder by a little bit. If you do attack somebody along the sea, the actual extra hillmen here can actually be pretty helpful, but for the most part, you've not got the sort of navy that's good for inland invasions. Anyway, I think you can sort of see how we're going to be doing this very aggressive push around and about the place with our Pontic forces. We're going to want to be basically building up, and if you didn't notice, right down here is the Seleucid Empire, and we're going to go on and take that gigantic empire with our fairly limited foothold through Samosata and Mazaka, since we're going to turn those into other military recruitment grounds while we work on consolidating our hold over this region up here. I believe these guys are part of the Seleucid Empire, but I'm not positive. No, they're not. Okay, so we're not going to have to worry about that. What we've got here, though, is a defensive ally, so they're not going to join in on any wars we get into. The Seleucid Empire currently likes us, which is actually, I think, strange. Usually they dislike me.
My friend.
But we can try and get some trade agreements. Most of them aren't going to stick, so
I give you welcome.
Don't expect these to help you out too much. But yeah, just get what you can, grab whatever you can get, and that will basically be that.
If I can give you a fair...
Okay, and I think this gives you sort of a good idea of what it looks like when you're playing as Pontus. What I typically like to do is expand through the Seleucid Empire because they make a decent challenge. If you wanted to take things a little bit easier, expanding through expanding eastwards through the smaller, more barbaric tribes, and then perhaps up north is possible, can be a legitimate way to go through a lot of very easy opponents, but the problem is that all of their armies are fairly weak and relatively poor, so you're not going to be earning a lot of money by taking those factions over. What you could actually do, though, is try and start taking over Greek states by attacking around Odysseus and Anthea, and then you can access the sort of barbaric tribes over here. You just simply take a fleet through sea to Odysseus. But me personally, I like attacking the Seleucid Empire. That's sort of the most reasonable thing in my opinion, especially since it's relatively easy to get the Hellenic factions, the Greek city-states, to get on your side about things, to be good allies for you, and to be good help for you. So that's my view of Pontus on the campaign map. You've seen me taking these cities over countless times, so we're not going to worry too much about that. The only difference is that since we've got such weak troops, we're going to be over-relying a lot on our Pontic Royal Cavalry, which is kind of annoying that we're going to have to be doing that, but it honestly is really one of the only ways we're going to be getting through these cities with any sort of celerity. Also, because of the differences in army sizes and the fact that I recruited the hillmen for this army, I do poison Samosata both times, even though I could potentially get more by killing the general in the Silence of Xerxes. So anyway, that is my look into Pontus on the campaign map. Let's take a look at Pontus in a battle. Okay, and here we are with my Pontic force here. As you can see, I've had to actually get some chevrons because Pontic units are actually fairly cheap. However, we do find ourselves in a storm, which is a little bit unfortunate. It's going to cause me to potentially swap around my army just a little bit. We're against a Roman force. In all honesty, actually, I think I'm going to stick with what I had. It's going to be sort of the best that I can really manage under these circumstances. I'm just going to have to keep all of my army elements very close together, playing against this Roman player here, and hope for the best. As you can see, I've got a lot of bronze shield pikes, and that's because they're sort of the decent front line units that Pontus can get. I could have gone with Pontic swordsmen, but they're clearly outmatched by Roman swordsmen. Simply, you can tell because of the cost. I mean, if there's any way that a 570 unit of swordsmen should beat the like 710 swordsmen that the Romans are packing, there'd be something clearly wrong with this game. But I am going to have to rely on my numbers to a certain degree, and shooting as well. I've got some of those very, very strong javelin throwers, so we've got some good damage potential if he decides not to charge into my pike front. And of course, what we really want to do is get him to charge that pike front, because that will get him to commit into a fight that he's very unlikely to win. Guarding our back, we've got a couple of units of hoplites along with some cavalry, and hopefully we'll be able to keep him with Okay, so as you can see, the weather is absolute nonsense. I can't see a damn thing, but that's sort of the way I think sometimes. Now, this is not necessarily my favorite setup with Pontus. I actually prefer a much more sort of aggressive skirmishing force with a lot more bows, sort of mounted archers. But this is what I'm going to be doing for this particular match. Since we're in a storm, I can't really take those, and you know, it would be too similar to my Parthia video if I relied too heavily on horse skirmishers to take out my opponent. Now, one of the other things that you can do as Pontus, since your units are so inexpensive, it's actually fairly common to see me taking artillery pieces, especially the Eastern Ballista or the Eastern Onager. Since their units are so cheap, you can easily afford to grab a couple of units of artillery or a unit of artillery and not affect your army size all that badly. So it's an option to take as Parthia or as Pontus if you don't want to see this full lineup roster that I've got here. And this full lineup roster with all these troops is still going to be a good army, but I honestly like to sometimes have a more concentrated force. That way I'm not running around with quite so many people. And you know, you can actually cause a lot of good damage in this game if it's clear out with an artillery piece. I just don't have that weather with me today. Let's see here. He's got a couple auxiliary... Okay, so most of his army is obviously hidden. I mean, he's showing me Vigiles, which are a trash unit, and he's got Socii Exotes Extraordinari, which are also fairly trash. One of the advantages I'm going to have here is that I've got my auxiliary, I've got my slingers. Eastern slingers have a little bit more range than auxiliary Syrian archers, but he's revealed the rest of his army here. It's mostly veteran legionnaires and Praetorian Guard, which is pretty predictable for a sort of Rome player. Let's see here, he's got legionary cavalry as well. So we're going to get our army set up here, nice and in position, and get ready to start firing with our slingers. I think he's just a millimeter out of range here. That's a shame.
We await your orders.
Yeah, I would swear that this is in range. This constitutes in range, but no, apparently not.
Slingers!
Okay, so let's wheel around our army and bring them up just a tiny bit more.
Riders, advance!
Now, we're going to have to try and match his frontage with our pikes since we don't want him sneaking around behind us. We're going to also get our units into that pike wall formation. Let's get these guys firing rapidly. If I can get rid of some of these auxiliary Syrian archers, we're going to be in a very good position indeed. Now, the good thing about the noble blood cavalry is I'm very confident that they can beat the Socii Equites Extraordinari in a protracted fight. Now we've got a little bit extra cavalry compared to our opponent here, so we're going to try charging into these yeah, let's try this.
Noble blood cavalry! Orders! Loose! Swift rider!
Okay, now we're going to have to back off.
Quickly now! Awaiting orders! At speed!
Let's see here. See if we can get some javelins off here, though.
Javelin men! Missile infantry ready! Slingers!
I'm gonna have to not worry too much about these guys getting hurt.
Advance at speed!
Looks like we got a couple throws off.
Our aim is true! Fire! Javelin men! Tribunes! My lord!
He's shredding up my javelin men instead of my slingers, which is giving me good opportunities to shoot away at those auxiliary
Orders, my lord!
Syrian archers.
Loose! Ready! As you say! Virtus!
And now let's get some shots against him.
On my order!
We can.
Withdraw!
One of my javelin units is gone, which is a bit of a shame, but that's fine.
Find your target! As you wish! Fill the skies! Await your order!
I want to be up close enough that if he tries to charge me with his cavalry, I can beat him.
Draw!
Yeah, he's focusing his shots at one of my guys at a time here. It's giving my slingers time to sort of pick at him, but with this weather, I think he seems to be at an advantage somehow against my guys. Maybe it's because my javelins have run up so close.
Orders! Daxiokos!
No, I thought he was going to charge in there, but looks like he hasn't.
We understand!
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and try and finish these guys off here.
Orders! Amisos! Missiles at your command!
Morale system's kind of funny in this game sometimes.
Javelin men!
Okay, so let's switch our targets since he's retreated those guys back, or let's just get both our slingers on these guys.
Orders!
So if we can get rid of these auxiliary Syrian archers, we can sort of draw our opponent forward. I think the problem is like he's in these bushes, which are giving him, I think, a slightly disproportionate advantage compared to what it should be really giving him. But to be fair, like the mercenary Syrian archers are a lot more expensive, and they are very heavily armored, which makes it difficult for me to out-skirmish them to a certain degree. Okay, let's try and take out these guys here.
We understand!
Yeah, as you can see, like every volley he does is crushing since my guys are under-armored. I'm not entirely sure where the morale break's coming from, though. Hopefully, though, he'll run out of arrows. That's the best I can hope for at this point in time. Not sure if I can run in here safely and get these guys, but you can certain as hell try. Okay, I should be able to beat legionary cavalry pretty easily. Okay, let's see if we can get our lines up here at all. Both of us are trying to play a very slow, methodical game here, which is good. I like it when the game goes like that. What the hell? Just decided to try and commit those Socia Equites Extraordinari, and that's fine by me. Let's try and get our fire in on those guys here. Let's try and move up to intercept these guys here.
Yours to command. By your command. Ready for order. For glory. Shield pikes. Yours to command.
Let's get our units all up here.
Attack their position. Ready. Double time. At your service.
Okay, so we're gonna have to abandon that.
Phalanx. Ready for orders. By your command, Commander. Break for glory. Yours to command. As you command. Awaiting orders.
Okay, so looks like we're going to be okay here. Goes general since he sort of put him in the open here.
At your service.
Okay, looks like we're starting to break through on that side, but we're going to lose these guys because of the sort of wonky concave that they found themselves in.
At your service.
I think I may have lost my standard bearer. The eagle's been lost, gentlemen. Okay, so my noble blood cavalry should be superior to his legionary cavalry. Okay, and we should be taking control of this battle by now. That Praetorian Guard doesn't have a chance against us here. And looks like we're going to be able to pull through pretty easily here. When did I put steady on my general? Well, in any event, let's charge these guys in. I think we're out of sling ammunition, so we're not going to be able to continue on with that. But as you can see, we're slowly starting to work our way through our opponent here, just because of the power of the pike phalanxes compared to the legionary system. The recent patch really put a number on sword units, so Rome is in a pretty bad place right now, in my opinion, and we've also got some problems for some of the barbarian factions, but some of the barbarian factions I've noticed rely primarily on other units for some reason instead anyway, so they don't really care. So he's using the drag through order, which is, although my guys are actually sort of obliging him pretty heavily here, but we're gonna cave in on that unit anyway. Armored legionnaires we're going to take out as well, and that's going to be that battle there. So Rome in this current state is in a little bit of a bad place, so it was a little bit hard for him to try and win against those pikes. With the nerf to swords, they're very unlikely to break through a pipeline. Anyway, that's a look at Pontus. As you can see, we've got pretty good kills on a lot of our different pike units, and all of our other units have done fairly well considering how inexpensive everything I was using was. Anyway, that's the final faction video. if you're interested in seeing any of these factions in a full playthrough, just give me a shout out in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to try them out for a little bit in the main video or a let's play of the game, as it were, and we'll see how things go. Since everything's being patched quite heavily, it might take a little while before I actually jump into a let's play of this, because they do tend to wipe your saves every time they do a major patch update. So look out for any major patches. Once it looks like it's stable, I'll start a playthrough, whichever faction people seem to like, and yeah, we'll see how things go from there. Anyway, this has been the final faction in my look at Rome 2 factions. I hope you found this informative, and as always,